So far in this course, you have already built couple of business workflows and automated those processes, and you understand the power of automation and what N8N brings to the table. You have an understanding of what nodes are, what are action nodes, what are trigger nodes, how data flows through an N8N workflow. But what if you want to clean that data? What if you want to group data? You want to remove duplicates? You want to transform some of that data? You want to send messages in bulk? So how do you do that? In today's lesson, I'm going to deep dive into some of the very essential nodes that you will keep on using as you build more and more complex workflows throughout this course and your automation journey. So welcome to my channel on AI automation. In today's video, we will see how you can clean data, aggregate data, how you can merge different data stream, and how you can receive data from external systems. And remember this, automation workflows are not just about connecting apps. It is about how you cleanse your data, how you prepare your data, how you share your data, how you process your data. And that's where all these 4 to 5 essential nodes comes into play, and we are going to look at these nodes. The first one will be the merge node, and we will see how this node helps us merge data from different streams. The second node that we are going to deep dive is edit fields, or it is also called set node, where we will see how you can format or clean up the data that is coming from an incoming node or an input node, and how you can output a much more formatted, a much more cleaned up version of the data. Third node we will look at is the aggregate node, that will help you combine multiple items into a single item. Fourth node is remove duplicate node, that will help us clean data and remove duplicate entries so that we only have unique data that can be processed further. And fifth and the final node that we will deep dive is webhook node. You have already seen an example of webhook node, but in this lesson I'm going to deep dive a little bit further and make you understand what a webhook is, what kind of situation it is required, and how we can use webhook node in N8N workflow to receive data from external systems on demand. So let's get to the screen share and break each of these nodes one by one and understand how they really work in a real workflow. Alright, so we are logged into the cloud instance of my N8N workspace, and you can see these are the nodes that we are going to cover. So what we are going to do in this lesson is I have written out some of the use cases that we will be implementing using these nodes, and these use cases will make sense if we make or build them on top of a real business workflow. In the last lesson of this course, we have already built and automated a business workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that lesson, and we are going to see what we automated and how we can implement these use cases in that particular lesson or the business workflow that we implemented. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, Control C, the sticky note, and I'm going to go back, and over here you can see this was the workflow that we built. So you can see in your business and operator daily manually reviews orders, check all recent orders from a system or a sheet, then manually decide if the order is pending, then alert the service team via email. If it is in processing, then notify operations team via Slack channel. If cancelled or refunded, then official email as well as Slack message is sent to a finance team. So that's what the business process that we automated. So we are going to use this workflow and see how these nodes that we are talking about, especially the first 4 nodes which are related to data transformation, how they can be helpful and what scenarios or use cases we can use in this particular business workflow. So in order to do that, I'm not going to change anything in this workflow. We are going to go back again, and what we are going to do is I'm going to click on this 3 ellipses icon next to this workflow, and I'm going to click on duplicate. So let's duplicate it, and you will understand how you can duplicate an existing workflow, and instead of building it from scratch, how you can reutilize what you have already built in. So I'm going to say workflow 3 and maybe like essential. I'll duplicate this. So you can see now we have workflow 3 essential nodes lesson as a new workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete this one, and I'll press Ctrl V. This is the sticky note that I copied from the blank workflow that I showed you earlier in the lesson. So I've just pasted over here so that we can keep a track of what we are doing and which use case we are going to implement. So the first node that we are going to look at is merge node. It helps us merge data from different streams, and I have 2 use cases over here. First one is combine order data with product line items. So as you see over here, like if I just zoom in a bit, what is happening in this workflow is there is a manual trigger over here, and then there is this this Google Sheet node, you can see in this Google Sheet node, what we are doing is we are going to fetch this mock orders data from our Google Drive sheet. And if I go to the Google Drive, you would see I have this mock orders data, which is more like header data, like the order ID is here, first name is here, last name is here, customer email, order status and order date. But there are no details of the order, like what product was ordered in this particular order. So for that, what I have done is I have another sheet called mock order details data. So over here you would see order ID 0001, ORD 0001 I mean, then product ID is PROD 001. It's a graphic novel. Category is books, quantity 2, unit price this, and total price is this. And then again for order 1 and 1, we have two more. One blender is there and the fiction novel is there. So you can see that within order 1, we have these 3 products ordered. Now you can see I have like about 291 rows if I exclude the header row. So there are 291 line items ordered across the 100 orders. So if in our business process that we implemented in lesson 2, how about we merge this detail? How can we do that? How can we access what orders placed, what kind of product? So let's go back and try to use the merge node. All right, I'm on the wrong screen. So this was the screen. I'll just close that one to avoid confusion. So over here, like I said, we are just fetching the mock orders data, which is more like headers data of the orders. So I'll click this step and you would see 100 records being returned. All right, so 100 records are returned and only order header data is being returned. Now what we are going to do is we are going to go back, and for now I'm going to delete this connection between Google Sheets and Switch node. And before that, I'll just open again Google Sheets, and what we'll say is, and I'll rename this so that we know which node is doing what. And I'm going to delete this connection now to the Switch node. All right, so the connection is deleted for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it a little down and I'm going to click on Control C. So this is copied to the clipboard, and I'm going to click on Control V, which is going to paste this node again. What we want is we want to fetch the order details as well. So I'm going to leave everything else same. Over here we can say get order details, and we'll rename it. And from the document, we want, instead of orders header data, we want just order details data. So this, and then again we need to choose a sheet within this particular Google Sheet. So that's like my mock order details data sheet. I don't want to like use any kind of filters, so I'll just test this step. There should be 291 records that should get returned, and you can see 291 records have been returned. And you can see order ID, product name, category, quantity, unit price, total price, all these records are being shown to us. And because it's a 10 page size, that's why you can browse through different page sizes. And so all this data is now returned. So now another thing what we can do is we can click on this connector icon and attach it to our get order details data. So now what will happen is as soon as we test our workflow, both orders data as well as get order details data would get returned. And I would like to tell you that the sequence in which N8N executes the workflow is that it is going to start from the leftmost node. First, it will process the topmost branch that you have. So over here, you would ideally get order details data first and then get orders data. Since I have disconnected everything, let's just take an example. I'll click on this test workflow and you would see that this node is getting executed first and then this node is getting executed, because it is the second branch which is down. So it works from left to right and top to bottom. This is very important to understand, because something like this, what you would want is ideally you want to fetch your orders first and then order details. So what we have to do is we have to switch the positions of these nodes. So I'm just going to drag it at the top and drag it at the bottom. It's not going to do anything for this particular use case, but in some situation you might be interested in executing the upper branch first and then the lower branch. So it is necessary to keep that in mind. If I again run test workflow, you would see get orders data is fetched first and then get order details is fetched. So now we have 100 items over here and 291 items over here. So what do we do about it? How do we basically merge this data? Because these are different work streams that are coming, and that's where this merge node that we talked about will come into play. So now I'm going to do is little zoom out, and then I'm going to select all this, and for now I'm going to drag a little further. Here what we would do is I'll search for merge node So we'll see that merge node is here, and what you can see is as soon as I have added a merge node, there is input 1 and there is input 2. So what you can do is you can say this is input 1 and this is input 2. So now it is going to merge the data that is coming from both the streams and then show us a merged copy of it. Now if I open the node configuration screen by double clicking the merge node, and I'll rename this, I'll be a little verbose here, and you can see now in this input, so there are two types of inputs. I have input 1 as get orders data and the input 2 is get order details data. So these two data sets are available to be merged. So over here in the configuration setting, there is a mode option, and if we look at mode, first one is append, which is basically output items of each input one after the other. So what it is going to do is it is going to append whatever data is coming from first input, it is going to append it to the second input. So if I just say this number of inputs are 2, right? So we can configure 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as well. This can be important when you are having same kind of data being returned from different branches and then you want to combine all of them into one single data set. However, in this case, it might not be useful, and I'll show you why. As soon as I click on test step, what it is going to do is, as you see, it has merged the two data set in a way that 100 order headers are at the top and then 291 order details are at the bottom. We don't want to do that. We want to merge the order information together, right? We want to understand which order header was associated to which order details. So for that, there is another mode that says combine. So combine is merge matching items together. So in this case, we are going to use this combine option because we want to merge the two streams together with a particular field, which is more like orders data. Over here, it says combine by. We want to have matching fields or positions or all position combination. So basically, this is more like a cross join. If you are familiar with SQL, which is more like structured query language, you would understand what a cross join means, or this is more like a Cartesian product. So for every record, it gets multiplied. So if I use this and test it out, basically going to, output a lots of records. So it's more like 100 multiplied by 291. Yeah, you can see 291,000 for each order. It has multiplied all the order details that were there. So we don't want this one as well. What we want is combine, but combine on matching fields. We want to combine items with the same field values. So I'm going to use this. We want to match it on order ID. So I'm going to drag it over here. So this one says fields to match have this configuration lets us handle a case where in the two inputs that are coming in, the keys, which is more like order ID, is different in both inputs. Maybe in the first inputs it says order underscore ID, and in the second input it could be like order ID or just ID. So in that case, if two different streams of data have different key names, then you need to turn on this option and you want to mention input 1 field name and then input 2 field name. Over here in this case, we have order ID for get orders data, and I'll just double sure order ID for the order details data as well. So I'll go back over here. What we will do is we'll just drag this order ID into the fields to match. Okay, so then we have output type. So what it does, so output type has different options. Again, this is where if you're familiar with structured query language, then keep matches is more like an inner join, where what we want is we want only those records to be merged where we have data from orders header and order details. So in this case, if there are items corresponding to ORD001 in order details, then that data get merged. If there are no details present for ORD001, then in that case that data does not get merged. So you won't see any record in the output even for the header as well. So that means that the entire data row for the header or this order row for which there was no product ordered will get removed. This helps you maintain the integrity of the data, that only that data that has valid products ordered are being shown. There could be a possible scenario where there is some corruption in data, where you are pulling from the system and the order header is only pulled but the order details are not pulled. In that case, at least the data is not going to get further processed if we are going to use keep matches. If we say keep non-matches, then in that case it is going to return us everything that is not matching. So in that case, if we have an order header that does not have a corresponding order ID values in the order details, then that would come, and vice versa. So that could be a helpful scenario in some of the situations where you want opposite of this kind of data. Then you have keep everything, where everything gets merged together. Enrich input 1, which is more like you enrich the input 1 data or you enrich the input 2 data. Enrich input 1 is like on the left side, so it's more like a left join. So let's see what happens over here. If I say keep matches, it should return me 291 records. So you can see it has returned us 291 records if I go to the JSON structure. So the first record, you can see the first 6 or 7 values are coming from the order header, and then we have values coming from order details. And you can see order ID is not duplicated in the second list of items which is coming from order details, because order ID is already present over here. So that means we are keeping matches, we are merging both the inputs together on a field called order ID. Now if I change it to, let's suppose, keep non-matches, let's do that and see what happens. Because in this particular scenario we have entry for each record, like each order has a corresponding entry in order details, this should return 0 to us. So if I click on test tab, so you can see no output data is returned in this case. Let's see what happens in the third one. Now what this says is, you can see items that match merge together plus items that don't match. So in this case, in terms of SQL language, this is more acting like an outer join. So if I click on this and test tab, you would see that everything is being merged. However, because I said that each order header has data corresponding to order details, that's why we are getting returned 291 records in this data set, which is more or less similar to keep matches. Now let's see what happens if I say enrich input 1. So you can see at the top we have order header data, and then at the bottom we have order products data or order details data. In this case, in case there is something missing in the product details, maybe like some of the products don't have like product IDs, product name, then in that case these values will not be present over here. Now next option is enriching input 2. If I click on that, now in this case, you can see all the input 2 data is coming at the top and input 1 data is coming at the bottom. So that means this is first processing input 2 and seeing whether there are matching records present in input 1, which is our orders header data, and then trying to combine it together. Now in order to validate these scenarios, let me go back and edit these data sets and create some of the scenarios where this kind of situations will occur, and then we'll see how the output would look like. In order to show you how the data would look like in different order types, what I have done over here is, in our orders header sheet, I have added these 4 orders. These does not have any data which is related to them in the order detail sheet. So in the order detail sheet, what I have done is, like, I have added some random entries over here so that this data does not have any particular order ID corresponding to them in the orders header data. This way we have some records which are there in orders header but does not have any corresponding records in order details, and we have some order details data that does not have corresponding order IDs in the orders header tab. Now let's go back to our workflow and see what happens over there. In order to see that, what we have to do is we have to come back and I have to run this first. So let's get the orders header data, and this time it should be more than 100 records. So you'll see like 104 records should be returned. So okay, 104 records have been returned over here. Now we'll go back and we'll similarly fetch the order details data. So we had like 291 records last time. So I'll just click on this test tab. We should have more records. So we have 296. So 5 more records have been added whose data does not belong in the order headers tab. So now I'll go back and you can see we'll open up this merged orders data node. We want to combine on the matching fields. I'll put the fields to match as order ID only, and we are going to look at all these options one by one again. So if I select keep matches, it is going to give us only the records that are being matched. So you can see that only 291 records have been returned and all the mismatched data has been removed from the result data set. Now let's look at the other output type, which is keep non-matches. So if I select select this and test this step, it should produce 9 items that are not going to be mapped. And you can see that order ID this does not have any corresponding data in the input 2. That is why it is just showing us order header data. If I scroll down a bit, okay, so this one again is input 1, but over here you can see that this is product details data, that means order details data, and you would see input 2 is the source over here. There is no data that is found in input 1. So if you want non-matches, that's how you can get the non-matches. Now let's look at the other one, keep everything. So this should return everything. Like, so now you can see that there are 300 items, that means 291 which were matching and 9 records which were not matching are also there. So if we look at, let's suppose, the 30th page, you would start seeing that these are the order headers data that does not have corresponding details, and at the bottom these are the order details data that does not have corresponding order headers. Now let's go back and let's say keep everything. I want like enrich input 1. So what I'll do is I'll select this and I'll test step. So this time it has returned 295 records. That means it has enriched or matched 291 records with input 1 and input 2. So till over here it has got the details, but in the input 1 we had these 4 records that does not have corresponding order details. So it has fetched that and put it in our record set. Now similarly, if I select enrich input 2, that means it is going to put the input 2 data into the entire data set along with the matching records. So this should return, I think, 296 records, because we had 5 details. So you can see that it has returned 296 records. Up to over here we had the orders and the order details data, but down below these 5 records, 1 2 3 4 5, all these 5 records were not having any kind of corresponding orders header data. But for our use case, what we want is combined data. So I'll switch it back so that we can further keep on building and enriching the data in this workflow. So I'll use this keep matches test step, and you would see 291 records are over here. I'll go back. So now we have merged the 2 branches of order header and order details data for further processing into our business workflow. So that's how you use merge data node. I hope you have a full understanding of this very important node that is there, that you can use or leverage in any of your business workflow to process data from 2 different data sources or branches, so that you can only work on single resultant data set.